This is Roger Stone for American Sovereign Bullion. Since 2020, the U.S. dollar has lost over 20% of its purchasing power. Meanwhile, gold continues to rise. Call 844-272-2428 or go to asbgold.com now to get your free gold and silver guide and learn how to protect your wealth with physical gold and silver delivered to your door or held in a gold IRA today. So go to asbgold.com now. Don't wait for the markets to drop. That's asbgold.com.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And at this point tomorrow night, President Trump could be pounding Iran into the Stone Age. President Trump saying just a few hours ago when he was at the White House during a press conference where he answered so many questions to the media, he said that he will unleash hell on Iran if no deal is reached by 8 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow night on Tuesday. And then he also said it's only going to take about 4 hours to basically pummel them to a pile of rubble. And he's talking about more bridges. He's talking about energy plants. He said, we have them all targeted out. We have it all planned. And if they don't come to the table and negotiate and agree to our terms, we will pound them into submission. And you know President Trump means what he says. Also, everybody, I'm sure all of you, like me, had tears in your eyes when you saw that second airman made it back safe and sound. I was so happy when the news broke last night. It's been about a day and a half or so when the word came out on Saturday night, very late Saturday night into Sunday. I was up and I was glued. I couldn't believe it. I was so happy and so elated and so thrilled of the incredible military might of the U.S. Armed Forces. What other military in the world could come in and do this evasion tactic and get that guy, that's the Wizzo, the weapons expert, the colonel, who I call a true American hero. The fact that that guy, and we just learned today from President Trump, he landed 40 miles away, even though they both parachuted about a second or two apart. If that doesn't tell you how fast those jets are going. So the F-15E jet was just obviously zooming at warp speed almost. And one of them jumped out. We know one of them got ejected, as we know, self-ejected. They knew what was coming. They knew that they had been hit. And we found out today that it was a shoulder rocket, heat-seeking missile. Even a ragtag guy with a missile over his shoulder gets lucky once in a while. And it sounds like one did, obviously, last week. And it took down that jet. We heard today about the 7 hours of sending the first plane in to get the first pilot in the middle of the daytime. That's harrowing. And obviously we lost some flights. We lost some planes as a result of that. And then the second one, this colonel, I mean, this is nothing short of remarkable. This is like better than any movie. I mean, the guy lands 40 miles away from the other one. He also self-ejected. But they're going so fast and the winds and everything else, he lands 40 miles away. That alone is remarkable. He's obviously injured because it's a big impact. And then he is bleeding profusely and he still is able to scale 7,000 feet up to the top of a mountain. He emits his radar, his signal, his encrypted code, and then he hides in a crevice. And that was almost 2 days. Surrounded by enemy forces in every single different direction. And then when you hear how the U.S. military did the decoys and the deception and all of that, that is nothing short of remarkable. And President Trump says Iran is humiliated. They are completely dismantled. And if anything doesn't show it, it's the fact that they were able to go in and get this guy. They were able to fool Iran, even though there were thousands in Iran looking for this guy. So many members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and then also average citizens, because they were told that they could get like $75,000 US, which is a lot of money in Iran, if you locate this guy. So everybody and their brother was looking for this guy, and he was hiding in a crevice in a mountain. and made it out alive. What an extraordinary story, and I can't wait to hear more details on that. But here is President Trump, who says Iran better come to the table or else tomorrow night could be their last. Take a listen.
So hopefully it could be over with quickly. Again, there are lots of different alternatives. We have many alternatives. We could leave right now, and it would take them 15 years to rebuild what they have. We could leave right now. But I want to finish it up. Iran, ready, cannot have a nuclear weapon. They are lunatics, and you can't put nuclear weapons in the hands of a lunatic. Thank you very much.
You cannot put nuclear weapons in the hands of lunatics. And then one of my favorite moments in the press conference, which took place soon after the Easter egg roll, where he made some comments there, was President Trump was called on. A whole bunch of reporters were asking questions, raising their hands. Well, one of them was the New York Times, and you can tell that President Trump has no love lost for the New York Times. Listen to this exchange between President Trump and the New York Times. And of course, the reporter asking the question said, how is this not a violation of the Geneva Convention? In other words, are you a war criminal for hitting a bridge where the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps was hiding underneath? You guys may have heard me earlier today. I say all's fair in love and war. And guess what? In wartime, you got to do what you can to make the enemy come to its knees. And it looks like Iran needs a little bit more pounding. I say bridges are fair game. Power is fair game. Anything is fair game to break this regime because they are not broken yet. That's the reality. So here is President Trump, and listen to the New York Times reporter asking him a question.
Mentally, these are disturbed people. If you think I'm going to allow them, and powerful and rich, to have a nuclear weapon, you can tell your friends at the New York Times, not going to happen. Means violating international law. Quiet. You no longer have credibility at the New York Times because the New York Times said, Trump won't win the election, and I won in a landslide. I won every swing state. New York Times said, Trump won't win the election. New York Times has no credibility. The credibility they have is it used to be all the news that's fit to print. The old gray lady, it was great, but they're running on past fumes, and you can't keep doing that. You have to be able to give the correct news. And people like you, who I know, are fake. You're fake. Go ahead, please.
Go ahead, please. Trump answering so many questions. Also, Raisin Cain, he's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And also Pete Hegseth was there. And Pete Hegseth at one point said, the Iranians would be wise to listen to President Trump because he doesn't play. He plans on hitting them and pounding them. And we will indeed pound them to submission. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Al in Yonkers, line 3. Go ahead, Al. Your thoughts tonight.
Yeah, hi, Rita. Thanks for taking my call. I think the president has to go in there if they don't come for a truce tomorrow. The reason is because the Strait of Hormuz has to be open. We can't let them continue to hold the world hostage with that. And the problem is that I think at some point, I don't want to get ahead of myself, that we might have to put ground troops in there because there's the element of sabotage there. You have their proxies there. So that has to be taken back because if it's not, things are going to continue to go bad with the market. These other countries are going to be compromised. So I think the president has to do what he has to do, and I wouldn't give them too much more time. But he knows better than me, him and his security people.
Yeah, no question. By the way, Al, I want to get your response to the fact that Democrats keep now using this phrase war crimes, saying that President Trump is a war criminal. We heard Chris Van Hollen was saying it earlier today. There's a whole bunch of them. Senator Schumer is now saying Trump's a war criminal because how dare he blow up this bridge. Here is Seth Moulton. Here is what he had to say. And again, he uses the phrase war crimes, referring to the Trump administration.
Well, first of all, I know active duty Marines who now refer to Pete Hegseth's department as the Department of War Crimes. That's because under Pete Hegseth's leadership, they do things like this. destroy civilian infrastructure, which, just to be clear, is a war crime. It's meant to hurt civilians. This is the same stuff that we criticize Vladimir Putin for doing in Ukraine. For years, we've attacked Putin because he's the one who's taking out civilian infrastructure in Ukraine, targeting civilian areas, targeting cities, targeting electrical generating plants, exactly something that the President of the United States called for last night in his address. And this is all because Donald Trump has no plan to end this war that he started and is now losing. He is losing this war of choice that he began in Iran. I mean, remember, just a few months ago, the Strait of Hormuz was open. Oil was about half the cost it is today. And he now is beholden to Iran. He's even pleading with China to try to open the Strait of Hormuz. So he's kicked the hornet's nest, he's got his foot stuck in it, and he doesn't know how to get out. So what is he doing? He's resorting to war crimes. It's an embarrassment.
That is a stunning comment from an American politician, a Democrat. Al, what do you think when you hear that?
Yeah, that's a new low. I mean, I even just not too long ago, in the last 20 minutes or half hour, I saw Blumenthal, the senator from Connecticut, basically be asked a question, and he basically believed that the president, if he does what, he also brought up the war crimes, and it's a new low. It's a terrible situation when you try to compare to bring up war crimes with the president of the United States, and it's terrible. It
is terrible, and it makes me wonder whose side are they rooting for? Right. I mean, when you say that, it's like the department. And where were they? Where were they when Democrats were involved in other strikes on individuals? Where were they? I mean, you go back to any time that there has been war, and I say that all's fair in love and war. In the sense that there really are not rules. And you've got the Iranians right now that if anyone's crossed the line, they've been hitting hotels. They've been targeting civilians. Right. They started that on day one. And where were the Democrats criticizing that? Nothing. Didn't say anything. Nothing. All they can do is criticize President Trump. And to me, it's a very dangerous new low. Like, I agree, it's a brand new low, Al. But to me, it's a very dangerous, troubling one, because what happens is, darn well that over there in Iran or elsewhere where our adversaries lie, that they're using these clips and saying, oh, look, here's even a senior senator who's saying, like the Blumenthal comment, look at this wonderful guy. And they have no context that he is, the opposition. They have no context that this is a guy who's a lunatic. Remember the whole draft, the whole dodging? He said he was in Vietnam and he wasn't. Remember that he was on the front lines and wasn't? I mean, come on, So it's like no, they'll put it up like he's the voice of logic, and they will use that for ultimate propaganda. And these people, it seems like they can't wait to undermine President Trump. And sadly, when you are dealing with a war, you're undermining America too. I may not have agreed with certain things that other presidents have done in terms of going into certain places or not, but we are here. And I will say I agree with President Trump on this one. And what we heard today, I mean, he came out in such a stark comment, Al, and made a comment and said that if his action in June, going after with the B-2 bombers, hitting those sites, if he didn't do that, and if he didn't do what he just did starting a few weeks ago, he firmly believed that Israel might not even be on the map. I mean, is that what Blumenthal wants? You wait until then, and then he would criticize Trump for obviously not having acted, right? I mean, you can't win for losing with these people.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, you see what Obama and John Kerry did by giving them money. I mean, 10 years ago, Iran was, they were ready to implode. And we sent the money, and they gave all that money to the terrorists. So that's what the Democrats do in this country.
Yeah, it is. And that's a sad state of affairs. Boy, pray for America, Al. And let's see what happens tomorrow night. That deadline where he said, you know what, come to terms or else. It is less than 24 hours from now. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And everybody will continue your calls right after the break.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is Greg Kelly. Donate now to Toys for Tots, which works year-round. Go to toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots supports children in need throughout the year with programs like the Toys for Tots Literacy Program. Established in 2008, it has provided over 63 million books to disadvantaged children. The Toys for Tots Literacy Program is committed to providing disadvantaged children with direct access to books and educational resources that enhance their ability to read and communicate effectively. Go to toysfortots.org.
We gather here tonight to bring women back to their rightful place.
The Testaments, a new Hulu original series from the executive producers of The Handmaid's Tale.
It's easier to accept a story than believe that the people around you are monsters.
The battle isn't over.
There comes a time when you have to take action, when you have to choose your own destiny.
Never quite as it seems. Watch the new Hulu original series, The Testaments, April 8th on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
TaxAct's filing software and live tax experts can help small businesses easily knock out their taxes. Actually, our experts can help you find deductions and credits for any sized business. Itty-bitty businesses, medium-sized, really big, mid-sized, small businesses, companies with 0 employees, and mom-and-pop conglomerates. Yep, our tax experts can help all of them. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
It's the Rita Cosby Show.
So President Trump says Tuesday is Power Plant Day. And he says he can take out the power, he can take out the bridges, he can do basically all the damage in a 4-hour span. It could be a very interesting night tomorrow night in the world, that is for sure. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Larry in Brooklyn, line 4. Go ahead, Larry, your thoughts.
Yeah, hi, Rita. I want to say, if they asked me a question, whether Senator Blumenthal and Senator Schumer would be on that bridge that was blown up as opposed to the top mullahs in Iran, I would have a tough time answering that question. However,
Larry, I don't want to go there, but I will say their comments have been crazy. That is for sure.
All right, that's not the question before us. So I'll just say that President Trump should take all the Democrats, all the jibes that he's getting from and the criticism he's getting from the Democrats, the unfair, ridiculous stuff they're saying, and he should take that as a sign to go further to do the right thing, because what he might find when he finishes this war is he might find a Holocaust on his hands. Because let's go to World War II. If the Allies and the Russians did not liberate the concentration camps, I think we know that the Germans would have probably killed all the Jews in advance. And that's exactly what the Iranian regime might do to the civilians, because you will not break this regime, because what they care more about is not leaving anybody alive who's going to turn Iran into a democracy.
So how do we fix this, Larry? Because I hear I believe I agree that they are brutally ruthless, no question.
Let me tell you something. I'll tell you how to fix this. This could very well be the biblical Armageddon. And there's a phrase, I happen to be Jewish, but there's a phrase, arm you Christian soldiers. This is Christianity versus Islam. You got to go in with soldiers. You got to kill every cleric, every turban, every fanatical. Not every Muslim.
But you know what? That's a lot of work, Larry. I hear where you're going, but that's a lot of people. That's a lot of work.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment is from Sarasota, Florida, where several police officers are credited with saving a man's life as they engaged in a dramatic rescue on the 6th floor of a parking garage. Just after 2 a.m., officers responded to an urgent call to help rescue a man who was in a major crisis. The officer, Benaziak, was first to arrive on the scene. He was able to establish a rapport with the man who was sitting on a window ledge of a downtown parking garage, which was approximately 70 to 80 feet above the ground floor. Now, the officer began speaking with the man, assuring that he was not in trouble despite the gathering of police and emergency vehicles on the ground below. During the operation, the officer calmed the man down to the point whereupon a rescue opportunity presented itself when the man accepted an offer from the officer to help him open a bottle. As the man reached out for the bottle, the officer instead grabbed the man by the arm and also had the assistance of other officers. They quickly pulled the man back from the windows and were able to get him off the ledge and get him to safety. By the way, all 3 officers that were involved in this harrowing rescue had only been on the job for anywhere from 3 to 4 years and said their training just kicked in. They wanted to save this man's life. And indeed, boy, did they ever. He is now at a hospital getting the help that he needs. And bravo to the great work of our men and women in blue. By the way, in the next hour, we are going to be talking to Dr. Sky about this historic moon flyby by Artemis 2. President Trump also calling into the Artemis astronauts, and we're going to play some clips of that too as well. It certainly is a historic night, not just here on Earth, but also in outer space. Meantime, President Trump says, you know what? He put out a tweet over the weekend having some choice words for Iran. And the critics are blasting him, saying, how could he use such vulgar language? I mean, how ridiculous. Iran is slaughtering 45,000 of its own people, and they're worried about the language of President Trump. And this is what President Trump had to say about his critics.
Yesterday in your Truth Social, you called the Iranians crazy bastards.
True.
What is your response to critics who say that...
I don't care about critics.
What is your response to critics who say that it is your mental health that should perhaps be examined as this war continues?
I haven't heard that. But if that's the case, you're going to have more people like me, because our country was being ripped off on trade, on everything, for many years until I came along. So if that's the case, you're going to have more people.
I love that. Trump just says, you know what? You're just going to need more people like me to be courageous and take on Iran. And then he was asked, are you worried about destroying Iran's infrastructure, the power plants or other things? Don't you think you're hurting the Iranian people? And he said, you know what? They want freedom. They'll take a hit if it can help for freedom.
You've said Iranians would be mad if you stopped these attacks, but why would they want you to blow up their infrastructure, to cut off their power? Wouldn't that be punishing Iranians for the actions of the regime?
They would be willing to, and it's suffering, they would be willing to suffer that in order to have freedom. The Iranians have, and we've had numerous intercepts. Please keep bombing. Bombs that are dropping near their homes. Please keep bombing. Do it. And these are people that are living where the bombs are exploding. And when we leave and we're not hitting those areas, they're saying, please come back, come back, come back. These are the people. I don't know what they do. All I can tell you is they want freedom. They have lived in a world that you know nothing about. It's a violent, horrible world where if you protest, you are shot.
You know, it's interesting. I interviewed the first American, Shar Pundadesh. He's the first American NFL player who's from Iran. And he said the same thing. He said that he has talked to a lot of his friends there in Iran, and they were saying that when they don't hear the bombs, they get nervous. They get worried when they don't hear the bombs because they're worried that America is going to forget about them. The bombs coming from America are a reassurance that they're fighting for them, that they're not in this by themselves. So that's a really powerful statement. And again, President Trump says his deadline is tomorrow night, less than 24 hours away, or else. Here it is.
We have a plan because of the power of our military, where every bridge in Iran will be decimated by 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again. I mean, complete demolition by 12 o'clock. And it'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to. We don't want that to happen. We may even get involved with helping them rebuild their nation. And you know what? If that's the case, the last thing we want to do is start with power plants, which are among the most expensive thing, and bridges. You saw the bridge. The bridge went. We were very close to a deal. And then I got a call from Mr. Witkoff, Mr. Kushner, and J.D. saying, I think they're breaking the deal. I said, tell them that's okay. Don't worry about it. But tell them to look out their window and watch. And within 45 minutes, I gave the order to knock out the biggest bridge. I gave the order, knock out the biggest bridge in, I believe, the Middle East, but the biggest bridge in Iran. And within 10 minutes after I gave that order, that bridge was over. So do I want to do that? No. Do I want to destroy their infrastructure? No. It will take them 100 years to rebuild. Right now, if we left today, it would take them 20 years to rebuild their country, and it would never be as good as it was. And the only way they're going to be able to rebuild their country is to utilize the genius of the United States of America.
That is such classic Trump. Oh, don't worry. If they're not coming to the table, just tell them to look out the window. And 10 minutes later, he takes out the biggest bridge in Iran. Because they thought, okay, Trump means business, but maybe he's not going to hit a bridge. Trump means business, but maybe he's not going to hit a power plant. Trump means business, but maybe he's not going to do X, X, and X. But President Trump said, no, guess what? I will. I'll do whatever I have to do to bomb you into submission. And also, President Trump revealed today, I thought this was really powerful too. You got Qasem Soleimani. And Qasem Soleimani, of course, is the IRGC leader. He was the guy who was in charge of it all with the, very, very notorious, ruthless. And that's who President Trump took out in his first year. Remember, in his first year, he took him out. First term, he took him out. And so today he brought up the fact, and this was interesting. He said, think about how different the world would be had I not taken that guy out, had I not done what I did back in June, hitting those 3 plants, and had it not happened with what I've just done in the last little bit, in the last few weeks. And then he brought up about Qasem Soleimani, and he said he was killed because he revealed that this guy, this very bad actor, very bad character, was plotting some very nefarious activities against American interests. Listen to what President Trump revealed as to why he justified that he had to take out Soleimani.
It was so easy. I terminated that, and then the B-2 bombers. And I did one other thing. I had killed Qasem Soleimani, who was an evil genius. And the reason I did it, I heard he was going to knock out 5 of our military bases. And had he lived, I believe we would be fighting perhaps a different Iran right now, because he's never been replaced, And I did one other, but this one was not picked up. Osama bin Laden. If you read my book, I said you got to take him out 1 year before the World Trade Center came down. So I wish you'd read the book.
Planning to target 5 U.S. military bases. I'd call that taking out Soleimani back then years ago a righteous strike. And what President Trump is doing now against Iran, righteous strikes. 1-800-848-9222. And you're listening to The Rita Cosby Show. Let's go to Reggie in Texas, line 5. Go ahead, Reg, your thoughts.
Here, first of all, Miss Rita, back in the days of the Vietnam War, North Vietnam would have killed to have had a statement from a POW equivalent to what that Bolton character. I'm not even going to call him a congressman. I can't believe that man wore the uniform. And if you've noticed, there's a pattern, Miss Rita. The pattern is he He. At no point does he ever say we about the United States. And that piece of garbage wore the uniform. The other point I wanted to make real quick was you brought up a great point about they never bring up the war crimes that are being committed now by the Iranians shooting drones and missiles at populated civilian areas and using the cluster bombs. And I think President Trump needs to think out of the box. Sometimes he gets too emotional. But if they're letting ships through the Strait of Hormuz that they're letting through, there's a way to counteract that. He probably should have thought about this 2 weeks ago. You take the ships that they're letting through and you don't let them through. You embargo their ships, the Chinese ships and whoever they're letting through. You don't let anyone out. And then all of a sudden, they're not getting the ships they want through. This becomes a different game.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. The problem is you got to find a strategic place to block them if that's the case. Because if you're going to do that, let's not forget, then you're sort of having to be in the Aryan theater, and it gets a little dicey and it gets a little messy if you're sort of hovering over the strait. You got to figure out, okay, where are you going to block them? And then what if it's a Chinese shipper? Then do you want to take on China? I mean, you see where the war could broaden pretty quickly at that point by doing that. On the other hand, I like the point you're making, Reggie. I just don't know how. I think it'd be extremely complex in practice.
Well, things are complex in practice, but they're getting pretty complex now. You're talking about taking out the infrastructure of a country. Right now, you bring up some great points. There are Iranians that are in your favor. That works great. As long as you've got water to shower, you've got heat and electricity. Once that goes off and you're out in the street with no power, no electricity, no heat, we'll see how long they remain an ally of yours when you're responsible for that. I'm not saying he shouldn't do it. I'm just mentioning that it's hard to keep the hearts and minds of people who you're fighting with to be on your side when they become directly affected by it. Again, I've mentioned this before.
But hang on, Reggie. Let me go further with you on that. And I agree, it is typically hard. But in this case, this regime is so ruthless, and anybody who goes out and protests right now gets shot. So they have the most brutal regime, one of the most brutal in world history that they're living with. So, nobody wants to obviously have their power taken out, the electricity or water or things like that. I haven't heard water yet, but it may come to that. But I hope it certainly doesn't. On the other hand, this regime is so fanatical. So these people don't want to live under this regime. Obviously, they would love for this regime to succumb, and then ultimately they could rise up. It also sounds like they got to get some more weapons, too, because as President Trump was saying today, it sounded like they didn't get the weapons yet that they were hoping to get, or it went to another group. Maybe that's a decoy statement. Who knows? Maybe they're actually well armed and sort of waiting for this moment. Trump loves the element of surprise. But I think the people, at least depending to your point, how long it's going to go. But if it doesn't go that long, but it's enough to send, obviously, a very powerful message to the regime and have them succumb, I think the people of Iran, the everyday citizens, would deal with the hardship for at least short term. They certainly will deal with the hardship if that were to happen. I really do. I think that they would take it because what they're living with right now is sheer hell.
But if you knock out their, again, I'm not saying he shouldn't do it. Because, again, it's cause and effect. You knock out the power that affects the citizens. How is that really affecting a group of people that are probably on emergency generators in some bunkers that are hiding out? These are fanatics that are out there. I'm not sure that's the way to go. I get his point, but every time you knock that out, it's not inflicting the damage on the people you want. And you're right, they don't want that regime. But in effect, that's not keeping them from being in power when you're doing that. Targeting their leaders and all that, that's the way to go. I get it. But going and targeting their power plants and knocking that out, that has no effect on these people. Rita, you're not getting a surrender from these clowns. But the problem is, and Reggie, I hear you. I don't think we are getting a surrender, and that saddens me. Or if it is, it's a fake surrender, from them, because I would never trust them. But the problem is, so where's the end game? I guess, how do you see it ending where's the solution to get them to, you can't, I hear what you're saying about trying to kill them, but there's a lot of them.
You know, there's hundreds of thousands of these Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and they are fanatics. That's the problem. A normal regime would have gotten the message clearly by now, but not fanatics. Fanatics like the kamikaze pilots. I keep equating it to the guys who went down, in Pearl Harbor, willing to die for a cause. These people are zealots. So how do you end this without saying you got to find every single one of them? Because that could take a long time, Reggie. You can get the leadership, but to get hundreds of thousands of them, that's going to take a long time. You realize that.
Oh, I do, but we also have to start thinking about realistic terms. You start talking about some sort of peace and ceasefire. Do you really want to leave a regime bent on revenge in power that at any point in time can say to you, well, we're about to get even for what you did to us 3 months ago? And bringing World War, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm going to agree with Larry. He made some great points. Unfortunately, World War II, and he brought up some great points. World War II, the war wasn't won with bombing raids over Dresden. He did have to put boots on. Unfortunately, that's a route that's going to have to take place, because if we don't take care of this problem now, it's going to have to be taken care of at a later point in a much more difficult circumstance. These people aren't going away. And if they ever get that nuclear weapon and they can fire it off as a last resort, they will. And when President Trump talks about taking the oil fields, can you honestly say to me, Miss Rita, that when the end comes for these clowns, they won't burn the oil fields or missile them and drone them themselves to burn their structure, their infrastructure? Of course they will. I'm not.
Yeah, I hear you. They are nuts. And that's why this is such a complex situation. And that's why I keep saying it's also a righteous action, because we're already seeing what they would do if they had a nuclear weapon. And there's no way in heck that we can ever allow them, or the free world could ever allow them to get a nuclear weapon. It just validates it. But it may involve some things like you're talking about. And I think it's going to get ugly before it gets better. And it may come to what you and Larry are talking about. We'll have to see. Hopefully the pounding from the air will do it. Let's pray. But you're right. You can't leave these remnants in power in any shape or form, Reggie. And that is the tricky thing. That's the reality. These are not halfway people, not like Delcy Rodriguez in Venezuela. I don't see it. I agree. 1-800-848-9222. We'll continue after the break, guys.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is the Rita Cosby Show.
And you knew this was coming, but here it is. Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari is apparently preparing to introduce articles of impeachment against Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, tied to the Iran war. Now, according to the Democrat, the administration's handling of the war and also Hegseth's role in executing it has raised what she calls serious constitutional and legal concerns, claiming that the scope of the U.S. military action has expanded without clear authorization from Congress, potentially bypassing lawmakers' authority over declaration of war. So now she is planning to introduce articles of impeachment against Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. And this comes as others have said. Ro Khanna came out the other day and said that if the Democrats get control of the House, they will impeach President Trump. And then he says if they get control of the Senate, they will remove President Trump. Are you seeing a trend here? I sure am. Let's go real quick to Norm in Brooklyn on line 5. Go ahead, Norm.
Yeah, hi, Rita. Yes, I'd like to remind the cowardly, vindictive Democrats and legacy media what war crime genuinely is. War crime is murdering 45,000 members of your own community. Okay, men, women, and children. Okay, that's what war crime is. Not bombing a stupid bridge. Okay, and open up a damn history book if you want to see what war crime is. I agree. These Democrats have lost their mind, absolutely lost their mind, and they seem to be on the side of Iran. Doesn't that sound a little anti-American to you, Norm? It sure sounds like it to me. Thanks so much, Norm.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?